Yes. All right. So we've got the recording going. So let's kind of backtrack. I'm actually showing a second camera that shows something we're going to play with later. But to get started, we left off. I've got a set of notes here. Part of this came out of Wikipedia. And we started off or ended our last meeting with a demonstration of an amplitude shift keying device. And we just saw the output, the rectified output in one of our AM receivers, and played with it for a minute and noticed that it was either on or off keying. Didn't spend a lot of time analyzing the length or duration of the on period or the off period, but we saw how it behaved and we recorded that. And then we were asked to figure out how we would demodulate that signal, or even modulate that signal, from GNU Radio, which is our learning tool. And so I've got a series of demonstrations here. Hopefully they won't drag on too long, that try to do that. But I finally came to a conclusion, like this morning, that there was still a lot more to understand, because before you can talk about the means of encoding symbols, you have to be able to do a rudimentary method of doing that first. You have to be able to accomplish. I found that I was just reaching one step further just to encode anything and decode anything, but it was relying very much on me, and it would rely on you to understand the encoding that's taking place and the decoding that's taking place. And I usually do these presentation studies just 24 hours before I have to do the presentation. Otherwise, too much time passes and I get cold on it. So I really wasn't able to go as far as I wanted. But I suspect you will appreciate what I'm going to show, and we'll take the next step in the next meeting. So anyway, let's go back here and just review some definitions. ASK is a form of amplitude modulation that represents digital data, has variations in the amplitude of a carrier wave. Even if it's Morse code, it's digital. It's got one or another value. And we'll talk a little more about that. In an ASK system or amplitude shift keying system, a symbol representing one or more bits is sent by transmitting a fixed amplitude carrier wave at a fixed frequency for a specific time duration. For example, if each symbol represents a single bit, then the carrier signal could be transmitted at normal amplitude when the input value is 1, but transmitted at reduced amplitude or not at all when the input value is 0. And then there's some talk here about the symbols. I want to wait on that until the next meeting, because that's where we will, we'll touch on it today, but we'll actually have to grind that out in the next meeting as to how do we convert data into symbols and from symbols back to data, if there's a conversion process, and indeed there will be. There is a sentence in the middle of this paragraph, the method paragraph. Like AM, ASK is also linear and sensitive to atmospheric noise, distortions, propagation conditions on different routes in PSTN, that's the public switch telephone network, etc. Both ASK modulation and demodulation processes are relatively inexpensive. Then there's this paragraph. The ASK technique is also commonly used to transmit digital data over optical fiber. For LED transmitters, binary 1 is represented by a short pulse of light and binary 0 by the absence of light. Laser transmitters normally have a fixed bias current that causes the device to emit a low light level. The low level represents binary 0, while a higher amplitude light wave represents binary 1. I probably should do a presentation on Paul Sarver and mine 27 kilometer laser contact. because we were using PWM, but basically we were modulating a laser above and below, or not below, but from a level of current to a higher level of current. And that PWM was then decoded by the receiver 17 miles away, or 27 kilometers. The simplest and most common form of ASK operates as a switch, using the presence of a carrier wave to indicate a binary 1 and its absence to indicate a binary 0. This type of modulation is called on and off keying and is used at radio frequencies to transmit Morse code, referred to as continuous wave operation. And finally, more sophisticated encoding schemes have been developed which represent data in groups using additional amplitude levels. For instance, a 4-level encoding scheme can represent 2 bits with each shift in amplitude, and so on and so forth. Last sentence important. These forms of amplitude shift keying require high signal-to-noise ratio for their recovery, as by their nature, much of the signal is transmitted at reduced power. So leading off from that, I want to stop and look at this right here. So there's this diagram floating around everywhere. And, as AI picks it up, it just stamps it out everywhere. So, if you go looking for ASK, you'll run into this in 100 places already. But this is a pretty easy to understand, I up here, the digital bit sequence, which is binary. It's not bipolar. I almost said bipolar, but it's either ones or zeros. Some have a longer period, like this second 1, but don't let that confuse. The resulting ASK modulated wave is the product of 1 and 2, or I and double I. Remember, we already found this to be true in amplitude modulated voice signal or tone. The value of above is multiplied times the carrier frequency, which results in the final ASK modulated output. So when I'm at 0 here, 0 times whatever this value is 0. Now, this morning at 5 o'clock, I was playing on the weekend sprint for the SKCC club, and the QSB was so bad on 40 meters that a complete character would drop out of Morse code. It's just a complete character, and then the next character would be almost as strong as the previous. So obviously, if you miss a bit here, these bits, and if this is CW, that would be like an A up here, and this 101, long one. If you miss the long one, you got a E. And now I'm talking to the Morse code type folks out there, but you see what they're talking about when it comes to propagation, and then of course noise could also impact the decoding. We're looking at encoding here, but the decoding would just be the absence of some of this, and therefore, null or less than reliable. Some error factor would creep in. Now, get to introduce a couple of new things that we haven't played with before, and so we're going to come here. And before we get into that one, we're going to talk about this vector demo, because as I started to see, how are we going to get a switch to turn on and off our modulation that once multiplied, well, this is just a 1 or a 0 coming into this multiply, but then it'll take this signal source and it'll either output or not output based on the value of the vector. It's either 1 or 0 here. So let's open this up and look at it. So this is just some character or some values I picked: 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. Now, to create a decode, this virtual sink ties to this virtual source, and we do a conversion from complex because so far we're dealing with the I and Q. Here we just take the magnitude, pass it through a threshold, which is a diode, and then I can reduce how many samples I keep because I've multiplied them by 100 up here. So I just did the opposite here, to kept 1 in 100. And then I can show what we've recovered. So I took a time sync of the repeater output. So this is real busy. It's got a lot of samples in it. Then I took a time sync after the multiply, which would be representative of our modulated carrier, because now we've got this 25 kilohertz complex wave being turned on and off. And then we pass that over to the, what we might call receiver, take just the magnitude of the complex number, pass it through a threshold, which will output either a 1 or a 0. Now, the way you read this is that the low is, I've designated as 0.1. We know we're sending 1 and 0. So if it's below 0.1, it will output a 0 from this block. If it's higher than 0.1, it will output a 1 from this block. So a lot of liberty taken here because I know it's just binary. I'm going to create this output right here as a result of whatever's hitting this threshold. And now, can you see that there might be multiple levels? This would be a hint towards using various levels of amplitude to represent different bit patterns instead of just one level. I should be on the glass board so I can draw that, but we're either we're dealing with a single value that goes up or down here. What if this went up like a staircase and came down abruptly? The next one it only went up to 1 and came down. Then the next one went up to 1, 2 steps and came down. So that's where we're headed. So let's run this thing. I hate that I haven't had the time to write a custom block for this stuff because you have to sit here and tweak on it to get it where you want it. That means pressing a bunch of times. Let's get it wrong once. Stop that one. Try to clean this one up. This is the modulated carrier. Of that one. You're probably already seeing what's going on here. And then I got to move this picture of you guys and be the same here. All right, let's stop that one. All right, here's everything we need to look at. So our pattern was, let's see it over here, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. So look for the long one. There it is right there. So let's just grab this right about here. And there's a zero. Well, I should have gone back a little bit further, but we'll grab two samples. There's a one there. Okay. So here's a zero right at the very beginning. There's a 1, 0, 1, 3 zeros, 3 ones. And here where it's not chopped off, same thing. 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. Now, once we multiply, 0 or 1 times 25 kilohertz, we end up with this. So here's our sample. Zero, one, zero, one, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. And then when we come over here to the recovered data, by now you're probably ready to grab this. There's the 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. Now I put dots as the marker over here because that way they stand out a little bit better. 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. But what is this? How does this really mean something to you and I? It means something because our eyeballs see this. And Jim says, that's a vector that goes from 0 to 1 to 0 to 1 to 0 to 0 to 0 to 1 to 1 to 1, and you trust me. And then when we look at this time sync at the end of the chain while we're in recovery, I position the screen such that I show you where the 0, 0, the 0 and the 1, the 0 and the 1 start, and you go, oh, I see it. But it didn't really transfer something meaningful. So that's that next step. How do we put something in ahead of this vector source that takes symbols and converts them into binary? And then conversely, how do we take something out of this threshold and go the other direction? Obviously, the receiver demodulation is very specific to the expected transmit modulation in this world that we're in right here. And that's what we were playing with last time, was just simply a garage door opener. So while there may be, some security concepts that would apply to the modern garage door opener, it's basically a set of digital codes that are being sent, and it's doing it very cheaply, and the receiver's receiving very cheaply, i.e. there's no clock synchronization. It's just waiting to see if the pattern, which is repeating over and over, will fall into bins and tell it what it means, be interpreted. But even those encoding schemes and decoding schemes are beyond what we're showing here. We've hard-coded this, which we could in a garage door opener, but usually the one I was playing with on our last meeting actually has a set of dip switches that set those values, those zeros and ones. All right, so now I want to go on to kind of the next baby step, which would be on and off keying, and it's basically a derivative of what we had at the Hamfest in January. And I'm going to start with the receiver here. We're going to actually transmit data over the air with this. So starting with the receiver, there's a mute button here. It's down here. Got that from Bob Strickland's MUD presentation. First place I ever saw that. And that just it won't pass on the stream to the speaker because it'll drive you crazy after you listen to it for a while. And then there's coarse, fine, and very fine frequency control here because we're going to use two separate Plutos, but the clocks, even though we've done the mod for the high stability, the clocks are not going to be right on. So it did require some tuning to locate, as the receiver to find the exact frequency of the transmitter. So we'll be using the computer that I'm sharing from will be the transmitter. And I'm showing you the receiver flow graph, but it's actually going to run on a separate computer. I tried to combine these with separate devices, and bad things happen. And I know that the Pluto is full duplex, so we could transmit and receive. We've done that before from the single device, but I didn't think that was as interesting. So there's no magic here. We've seen all of this before. It's just kind of a normal AM receiver. And the transmitter is here. Now here, you will get introduced to a couple of new things. There is this vector source. I gave it the name Morse code vector source, and it has some custom code in it. We'll take a message that is input into this message edit box. It will, let's just look at the code. By the way, you can open that code right here where it says open in editor, which I might demonstrate that. But the generated code, here's what it looks like. It only takes 60 seconds to really spin through this. So there's a table up here, and as soon as you see these values, if you know Morse code, it doesn't surprise you. So an A is represented by 10111. That's going to be a dot, spacing of a dot length, but nothing transmitted. And then 3 times of 1, that's 3 times as long as a dot, and that we call a dash. So what is this? This is our vector value. This is the vector value we want to pass over to the next stage. So let's dig down in here. All it's doing here, declaring a few things, then looks at the text box where you've typed in something to be transmitted. If it's greater than 0, it starts a loop. That loop is to get the first and subsequent character, convert it to uppercase, test to make sure that character is in the Morse table, which is above. If it is, then build the vector. Then add a letter space at the end of it, which is the length of a dash. It's 3 bits, but it's the absence of signal. Then after you've looped through the length of that text box, you add a word space, which is the length of 4 bits. And we're going to stick them in an output array and transmit them. Now down here, there's some little ditty that says unit message port pub. It's looking for a clear command, and if it's received, then it's going to blank that text box value. But that signal's missing because you would have to connect this port with this first one on the message box. And if you did that, then when you start this flow graph and you type something into the message box, it will transmit it once and then clear it out. So I've got it currently set. I mean, you can do that. You just have to click here and click here. And you can't see the arrow because it goes behind these blocks, but it's there. But makes a much more interesting demonstration to let it repeat and go on and on and on. Now, it's not the same as this repeat. This repeat is an adjustment to the sample rate. Now we have to come back from this unsigned character to a float. Then we go over through virtual sync source. We go through a couple of filters. I'm going to take a time sync of the output there, and then we have to flip back to complex. That's the only thing that Pluto's going to know. And here's another adjustment, repeat interpolation 20. That gets us from 50 kilohertz over here to 1 megabit samples here. Again, we have some instrumentation. Well, we just got the time sync here, but we have some adjustment controls. One is RF attenuation. I'm not going to change that. It just works the way it is. The center frequency, which is 2.3041 or 2304.1 megahertz. And then I put a speed control on the Morse code. It's defaulting to, well, I want to change that. It's defaulting to 13 words a minute. I'm going to make it a little faster than that. Okay, so the expectation here is that we'll be able to input a message. And when we press enter, this block, which is waiting and willing, will extract that text message. And for every character in that text message, including a blank, it will look those characters up in the table. It will pull down the bit string and add it to an array, pad it with 3 zeros as it works each character. And then at the end of the string processing, it will add a word space. And it will continue to repeat. You know what we're missing here? Just now realized it. I didn't really notice any negative effects, but I want to add that. All right, I think this is as ready as it's going to get. Now let's go ahead and run this. Now, one thing I want to mention is that when you first run a flow graph like this, there is a little bit of output from that Pluto. And it's kind of surprising, but it does have a little blip of RF output right on frequency. So that was, I'm extremely pleased to see that. Anyhow, here's our input down here. I'm not going to start that yet until we get the receiver going. So let's go over to that picture. I hope that you can see this. Probably going to be a little bit hard, but We're running in Linux on this computer, and rid of this thing. Well, guess I'm going to get rid of it. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so this is the script or the flow graph that I was showing earlier, and um, it takes some adjustment to get the different I don't know what we call them, the instrumentation pieces right, but I'm going to put a mini tiny spectrum analyzer down. I'm just turning it on. How these real-time presentations go, Bob. Well, first thing you're going to see is some junk out of my router because 2304 is kind of right in the center. Oh, I am going to start the transmitter, and we'll flip right back over. Well, the transmitter is going. We just have to put the message in. So how about we put, well, we're microwave type, so let's just put T, 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 T. Press enter. And right away, you can see, if it catches it just right, you can see the signal now coming up in the center of the spectrum analyzer. Now I'll start the receiver going. You'll hear some real stuff. Oh, without too much more of that, let's stop the transmitter and let's change the message. So we'll start it again. Might have heard that little bump. That's the one I'm talking about. Okay, let's make it test this. All right, pressing enter. The spectrum analyzer doesn't catch that fast code as often. Maybe it will for a period and then it will not. Well, if I didn't show you. Okay. So let's mute this before it drives us nuts. And let's look at this a little bit closer. So I'm going to take this out of the way, turn it off.
So Jim, we didn't hear the CW. Were we supposed to be able to hear the audio?
Yeah. Well,
I'm not sure why we didn't know if you're hearing it in your room there.
let me just turn the volume up. I had it lower because the wife was in the room. It's the brightness. If you're going to hear it now. Hear it now?
I'm not hearing it. Maybe somebody else is, but I'm not hearing it.
WH6A not hearing.
Loud.
I just wanted to let you know for the recording that you weren't getting through on that, but I understand.
Yeah.
saw it on the spectrum analyzer.
If see if I can share the microphone on my headset. Oh, it's driving me crazy. I'm going to turn it off before I try to help this. Whew. Like it's trying to put me in safe driving mode because I have my phone going here. If I dare to move this receive volume, also. Can you hear that now?
No,
Still can't
Negative.
hear it.
not now. No.
No
Okay.
CW.
It's funny because I think we're using the microphone on my computer, and it's so loud it give you a headache in a few minutes on the second laptop here.
Maybe Zoom has some way to filter that out. I don't know.
Well, it wouldn't be a live presentation if you didn't have a problem. Dang it. All right, one last thing. See if I can unmute my phone presence here. Right, it allowed me to unmute my uh, okay. Well, I don't guess we're going to have that. I will open this up one more time and you can tell me if you hear it or not.
No, don't hear anything.
Okay. Strange. That'll give me something to diagnose.
Yeah.
But very, very loud. But I did want to show you the recovered data. So let's take a look at that, even though you can't hear it. Correct values on 4. There next week. We'll have to write a custom block so that I don't have to do this, where you can store what you want those access values to be. Oh, have we seen it here? Did it. So there's this, and that's the end of test. Now let's stop this one. Now let's move this Y range again. It's got a heck of a spike. and then we'll stop it right there. Okay. Here's test. In the dark, practically T, and then THIS. Here's the recovery. It does have some kind of like almost a big pulse in the beginning. It goes way beyond what I would expect. So it's like we would call that key clicks in the old days. But there's a T, an E, an S, and a T, and a T, an H, an I, and an S.
Yeah, we can see that. That's cool.
Thank you. So step back here and probably goof everything up, but I'm going to show you kind of how it's set up here. Pluto over here on your right. You see the spectrum analyzer. It's just not going to focus. The transmit Pluto is over here on this side. And of course, the screen that I'm sharing from. Right. So that's kind of the best part of the show. And I would just say that, today we saw the vector source. It is acting as a switch for us that can turn on and off. And on and off keying, which is what this CW message is, and the beacon, we could call it. It is a form of ASK. But the unusual, to me, comparison here to our garage door opener is that it is a combination of the existence of the signal. In other words, I hear a tone, and the length and the spacing. And I don't know about you, but if you've ever noticed how bad, CW decoders work compared to the way your brain works, you can begin to understand that trying to demodulate CW in a best case scenario, you would have to be able to dynamically adjust to the mark in space, the length of the mark and the length of the space. And I think that would require a lot of computational power. But we do that in our head, very easy. On the other hand, sending the code certainly seems much easier to accomplish. And we know that there are CW encoders that are dime a dozen and work well. So I think for next session, we should look at other forms of encoding that use more than one level and what we can do to try to synchronize signals a little bit better from transmit to receive. I'll put these files up on the NTMS website as usual. I only have these that we're looking at here today. So that the vector demo, which was here, vector demo. And then the transmit and receive OOK, I'm calling it, on and off keying. If you have radios, you could just change the frequency on these if you want. I'm licensed to transmit on 2304, so I just put it together like that. Actually, these were left over from Cowtown Amfest, where we had a beacon set up and it was operating at 2304. And we had a SDR radio set up receiving it, and also an analog Cooney transmitter receiving. So that was kind of neat. Are there any questions?
Yes. First of all, thank you for the presentation. Fantastic. Very good. My question is, did in your instance, did the recovered audio exhibit those key click artifacts we were looking at?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
There's a distinct snap, and that let's just look at it on this computer. This is the flow graph that we were watching on the other one. That time sync right here is coming right out of this complex to float following the multiply. So it's actually recording what we can hear in the audio, and I don't really know where that's coming from without some more study. It could be this low pass filter has to be tightened up, but I wouldn't think you'd want to have it that tight where it would chop those legs off. It's better to find out where they're coming from, probably.
Yeah, Roger that. Thanks.
Great
Thanks for the
observation.
explanation.
Great observation.
And I guess could it be coming from the transmit side?
I think so. We it's a little hard to see in that waterfall that's on the other computer, but let me flip back to that for just a second because it's still transmitting right now. There is some hair on the right and left of this waterfall that is really, that's a frequency splatter, if you want to call it. Yeah. Whereas this is, oops, I didn't know I could do something that good. You can see those longer legs going way out here. That's probably, let me see if I can actually get on it. Center of the signal is 2304.102.46. Oh, I've messed it up good now. Here, let's go start it over. Oh, I shut it up.
One thing I did one time, I monitored the beacons on all the NTMS beacons with a GNU radio like this, and just looked at the modulation on each one of them and recorded them and actually sent that out as a message. And I guess it'd be interesting to do it again and compare them to what they were like several years ago.
I did see your, here's the sound again. I did see your screenshots of the different beacons on the different frequencies, Bob.
Somehow you're out of focus on that camera now.
See that? See if I can just force it. No, it came back in.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to zoom in here, try not to screw this up. Center of the frequency, 2304, 102.44, but it's splattering out here.
Yeah, you can really see it there.
60 hertz. What I picked as a point there. 60 hertz. It's a bigger one. But okay, there's something to study on, and that's where's that spike coming from. I'll take that and work on that. Anything else?
Jim, I was looking back at the Cowtown presentation you did about the multiband radio, and you showed a filter in that, a multiband filter.
Yes.
I noticed that Amazon sells multiband ham filter that is selectable from 2 meters up to 2.3 gigahertz that you can get for $60. It's got the integrated switches already implemented, and the loss is, I think, about 4 or 5 dB for the filters and the switches, and it covers all the bands up to that point. It does not cover the 2.3, 3.4, or 5.8 or 5.7 gigahertz bands. But I'm trying to play with that in SDR.
Nice.
Although
Is it TTL logic to switch it?
it's got a rotary switch on there that is BCD coded, so it would be pretty easy to take the little switch off and run some TTL lines over there to drive it.
Well, I started down the rabbit hole of figuring out how to hack the. First, it was the hack RF, and then I drifted over to the Pluto, trying to figure out how to get control on the external ports. Because on the board, after you crack it open, there's a whole bunch of header pin through hole solder connections.
You'd have to
And
have one of those for PR switch, right?
Oh yeah, use it for relay switching. Use it for TR. I just can't speak from from authority or knowledgeable standpoint yet. I just know that there's got to be a reason they're in there, and those guys at Analog Devices, no doubt, planned ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So it probably sits there and looks at those on some frequency, and that's a little deeper than where I'm at right at the moment. I've only got 900 other projects.
Yeah, I guess you could always have some sort of auxiliary device that hangs off the same or host computer with a different USB connection on there. But it'd be nice if you could have it come across directly from Pluto.
Yeah, more than one way to skin that cat. It would be nice to have, and a great demonstration if you had a SDR radio that could just cover everything from 5.7 down. And that's what those guys had. They just didn't demonstrate all of the bands, but they did transmit Q65 across the room. I think it was on 10 gig, and they had an external mixer. One guy had two mixers, the other guy had a common mixer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they were using some sort of 10 gigahertz oddball LO to do a mix down to.
Yeah, you were there, weren't you?
Yeah.
Just now remembering Vancouver was a lot of days ago.
Yeah. But there was also the Asian guy that presented a multiband thing, kind of like what you're showing here. But I didn't think that he had as many ports on it as what you have here. The board that you got there, I looked up the call sign on that. It's Carrie something or other from San Diego, I think.
Yeah.
design that. It seems like it's got really high loss on it. I guess it's actually got three switches. It's got the six or eight-way switch, and then also has a separate TR switch on it. So you got to go through three switches plus the loss of the filters. So that's potentially a lot of loss added up.
There's these itty bitty switches on the Wavelab board that are really low insertion loss, and they go all the way up to about 4 gig.
Hmm.
They're just very tiny. I asked the guy if it would be all right for me to have the Gerbers, and he said yes, but he was on vacation and never got back.
I was just looking at that board and looking at the part numbers on there. That the haven't gotten through all of them yet, but let's see. The first two filters are probably inappropriate in his list. The 1296, it's actually a gigahertz wide filter, and it doesn't really give you much filtering, and it has a lot of loss. And it's designed for 75 ohms.
Oh my, there's
So
an impedance bump.
yeah, so I wouldn't recommend that part. I mean, it's probably something else in a similar footprint that you could use, but it doesn't look like that's a good choice. And the 2.4 looked like it was about more than 3 dB of insertion loss. The bandwidth is probably okay. The 3 gigahertz part actually looks pretty good. It's I think about a dB of insertion loss, and it's um, appropriate bandwidth. But it, the thing that's available on on Amazon is called let's see, what is it? Ham. Here it is. Um, Ham filter bank, and it's made by New Elec. And like I say, it's about $60, and it's got the micro USB connector on there for power and SMA input and output.
Got a
It can all
single input, single output.
right, and a rotary switch that you can select which band you want.
Let us know how you do on that.
Well, I've been kind of disappointed with the results I'm getting, but there's something wrong with my setup. I thought that if I put an LNA and a filter in there, I could improve the reception. And so far, I'm not getting much benefit from that. But like I say, I think there's something wrong with my setup. I'm still playing with it.
Anybody else got anything?
I have tested the filter. The filter looks pretty good uh, for the bands that it offers.
I am not sure of the next meeting. It probably in 2 weeks, but I've got to see where that lands and what else is on my honey-do list. Continue to watch the reflector, and we'll send out an email to it. Anyone have anything else before we adjourn?
Thanks, Jim. Nice job.
Thanks, Bob. We will talk to you all later. Thank you for coming in.